Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to ilovelyle.back.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back. Proud sponsor of Football at 4. Geoff Mosher is in the house today from the Inside the Birds podcast. And we've got, new news to somewhat extent here. The potential trade partners unwilling to meet the demands, Geoff Mosher, of a Carson Wentz trade. Is this surprising to hear? I mean, is this just how this is going to go? What happened on Saturday that it sounded like this was imminent, that it was going to be in the coming days? Wednesday's got to be the coming day, right?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the depth of imminent. I feel like for fans especially, like one day feels like a month, right? So every day that goes by, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe there was no action. And really it's only Wednesday. I mean, we released our podcast on Monday, Inside the Birds, myself and Adam, and said we felt it was imminent and that would happen this week. And we've still got today, tomorrow, and Friday left. But to your point on the gamesmanship of trades, I think that's what you see. I mean, obviously the Eagles want a lot, and obviously the teams involved are looking and saying there's some risk on our end in giving up a lot for a guy who was benched and come here that he did. And so this go. This is how negotiations go, and Howie's pretty good at it. So it doesn't surprise me that nothing's been done yet. I just much is going to change between now and when the deal eventually gets done. I don't know who's going to sweeten the pot if they don't feel like there's a great offer out there. And if there were a great 2 first-round pick offer out, I think it's safe to now.
You just said that's something Howie's good at. I thought he was the worst.
Who said that he's the worst?
People say that. People say that. He's the biggest problem. He's got to go. But you just said he's good at something.
Well, listen, Andy Reid is great at winning games. He got fired. Let's not take what people say and hold him to one part of it. He is good at trades. He's not always great at everything. And, certainly people who have been more accomplished than Howie Roseman as general managers have gotten fired. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you how he shouldn't or should or shouldn't get fired. There's evidence on both sides.
No, and I'm kind of kid, but this is a spot where Howie has done well in the past. He has done a good job at playing his cards in trade. So if you don't like his drafting or you don't like the personal relationships he's built with some of these people, this is the time. Look, there was a time when the fans dubbed this Howie season. They had that much trust in him that he got his own name of a season, and this was part of it, that he got guys in trades. Brandon Brooks, he was able to trade guys off like Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso that had bad contracts. So if there is one time of the year where you should trust Roseman, it is how he's playing this Wentz thing. But, I got to ask you, Moshe, I mean, teams are saying that the demands are, they're treating him like he's Matthew Stafford. I mean, should he be doing that?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't think that's fair. I know that statistically speaking, over the course of their career, there's probably a lot of similarities between Wentz and Matthew Stafford as far as, playing at high levels, as their numbers would suggest. But Matthew Stafford was never benched before, and I don't know that Matthew Stafford ever had a year like Carson just had there. And recency bias is a big part of trades. Whenever, just think about yourself in fantasy, football, basketball, whatever. You are always afraid to draft that guy who's coming off a pretty lousy year, even if that guy has a pretty consistent record. It's just always that sits with you. Is this guy ever going to be what he was again? And I'm sure that, in real life, those concerns are out there too. I do think, take a team like the Colts. I've been told that the Colts don't see it as so risky because they have a good coaching familiarity there. They have Frank Reich. They have Press Taylor. They have a great offensive line. So I don't know that they necessarily see this as risky as maybe the Chicago Bears or another team that might be involved, but it's still nonetheless a guy coming off a pretty bad year, which means you have to put a lot of energy into rebuilding him, and there's just no guarantee that you're going to get what you once saw from Carson Wentz.
I forget if we brought this up on Monday or not, but would putting Ertz in a deal with Wentz make it more interesting?
No, Hunter, the Eagles will not take Carson to Micah Parsons at number 8. We talk about this all the time. No, I think it would be smart. I have no idea if Zach Ertz's name's his name has come up in the discussion of a trade. But I do think it would be smart if you're the Colts, knowing that both Wentz and Ertz are probably going to be on the outs, to try to put together a package and see what you can. I mean, the Colts do have some decent tight ends, right? They had the Mo Alley Cox guy, the former basketball player who caught a bunch of touchdowns for them. I don't know how many yards he had, but he seemed to flash in the touchdown production area. And then they have, do they still have Jack Doyle? I think he was with the team last year. But I think Ertz would give them something more of a consistent target at the tight end position.
Do you think,
but
Moshe,
then again,
do you think that adding Ertz to a deal brings back more in return? Or is that just, hey, we know you don't we know you want right, we know you want to get rid of Ertz's contract, so it's almost like you throw him in because we're helping you out.
Yeah, I mean the Ertz contract doesn't hurt the Eagles that much because the guaranteed money is pretty much off. There's not a lot. But the same factor that you have with Carson Wentz, you have with Zach Ertz, and that he's coming off a year which was not very good. And I know he was hurt for a lot of it, but even before he got hurt, he was not having a very good year. He was not as productive. He's a player, not an old player, but 30-year-old player. So I don't know that all of a sudden you're getting that extra first-round pick that you're looking for because Zach Ertz is involved in the deal. I don't think it's as much of a sweetener, but it could be something that just helps make the Colts stand out as the best trade partner.
It's not possible that, or is it possible that this doesn't go down and Carson Wentz is back next year? I mean, what are the chances in your mind that that is actually the case?
I know I've heard it out there that that's a possibility, and I'm of the belief, and this is just me speaking, and of course from speaking to people around the league, but no one's telling me one way or another, yes or no. But I'm of the belief that they're too far over the bridge here, that they are past the point of no return. The name's been out there. The teams have been out there. People need quarterbacks, even if it's not the Colts or the Bears, maybe it gets rekindled with another team and it's not as much compensation. But I just don't see how Carson Wentz can come back to this team at this point unless major fences are mended. And I don't have the knowledge if they're trying to mend the fence.
I would say
if they're trying to deal them, I'm not sure they're trying to mend the fence.
If they said today, Howie Roseman has stepped down, do you think Wentz would seriously, almost like Clintack did, he just stepped down? If Howie Roseman said, I'm stepping down, do you think Wentz would change his tune?
I don't know, Mike, because I
feel like people, Moshe, and you can maybe, I feel like most people feel that Roseman is the problem, no? Or is Laurie the problem? Does he not like Laurie? Does he not like Roseman? Does he not like both of them?
Well, obviously, Doug was part of the problem.
He's gone.
That's not, and he's gone now, right?
And he still wants to leave.
Doesn't want to come back. So, is Jeffrey Lurie part of the problem? I have not heard that. So, is it just the way the organization does business? I mean, he hasn't felt supported for a variety of reasons. We've talked about that on the podcast. You can go back to at one point Michael Silver's report that he has poor, sloppy practice habits. What I would have to know to really answer that question, Mike, is if he's blaming some of this lack of support on Howie and Howie only. So I don't know that. My guess would be perhaps there would be some saving grace if they had a different general manager in, but I don't know that for a fact.
All right. One of the reports out today as well kind of insinuates that the Colts have asked for a player along with Wentz to kind of help close the gap there, but that Chicago is growing impatient with the Eagles. It sounds like, Moshe, and you can speak to this maybe more, that the two teams that sound like the best fits are starting to get a little impatient with you. So it's almost those two teams, it's either you got to figure out something quick or you might be out of suitors.
Right. Now, it makes me wonder, is that real? Not that I'm sure it was said. I don't think the report is made up. But if you're the Bears, are you purposely saying you're impatient because you're trying to, give the Eagles the inclination that you might be looking in another direction for a quarterback? I thought it was very interesting yesterday that there was a report that the Colts are all of a sudden having their focus on Matt Ryan in Atlanta. So I don't know if you guys saw that, but that came from Dan Dakich from Indianapolis
from
Sports Talk Radio. And
the former West Virginia basketball coach for 10 minutes.
Yeah, there you go. It's the same guy who had Chris Ballard on his radio show last week, I believe. So I think that was fairly interesting, and that could just, again, be all part of the gamesmanship. We see it all the time, and it's hard to know what's real, what's being fabricated and pushed out there, and or both. Maybe the Bears are impatient, but they don't mind, and they don't mind saying it to see if it forces the issue.
Should they feel pressured considering this needs to get done before the new league year starts? Because what's that, a couple weeks away or so?
I would think that the Eagles don't want to have to pay all the money that kicks in. I know it's been said that if they don't get what they want, you can still hold on to them. You can bring them back and then do what you've done in the past, and that's wait for a quarterback to get hurt, and all of a sudden you got a shiny new Carson Wentz who's, you can talk about how rebuilt he is because everybody looks good in OTAs at training camp and maybe pawn him off. But I feel personally that Howie would like to get this done sooner than later. And I think that's better for the organization. I don't know that you want this hovering over you all spring and summer long.
I can't imagine that you would. And as you said, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Let me ask you this. If they legitimately had a first-round pick on the table, do you think that deal would be done by now?
No, I think that there's a chance they could get a first. There's also a chance, by the way, that they
could.
Twos or something.
No, there's a chance that they could. I guess my question is, if they already did get a first, would Howie say, "You're going to give me a first? I'll take that deal"?
No, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, I think it's possible that they already do have that, but Howie is trying to hold out to at least get more, and that his fallback is to take that first. I don't think a first makes him just do it right this second. I think eventually he'll probably wind up just settling for that and maybe a little less, maybe 2 twos, or maybe that first is next year and not this year. It all depends, but I don't think he's going to just jump at that kind of offer. Could be wrong, but I don't see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think at this point, the Bears and the Colts are both in that same range, 20 and 21. I mean, at the end of the day, it sounds like, hey, if you had the 20th pick or the 21st pick on the table right now, wouldn't you kind of be like, I don't know that I'm getting much better than that. I don't know. Maybe he feels like he's getting more calls than we think he's getting.
Well, that's just the thing. I think that those are fair offers, either of those picks, and I think Howie knows that inside, if that's being offered. But there's no shame in just trying to make it seem like you have a little bit more. If you've got the thing you have when you're Howie in this case is you at least have enough interest from more than one team so that you can create the perception of bidding war or leverage. The Bears are going to give me their first and a player. So now you go back to the Colts and you're like, well, your first is a little bit lower. It's basically the same, not the same, but can you offer a better player than this guy? Or can you offer me a better pick to sweeten it? And you play one versus the other until one of the teams calls your bluff, which may be going on right now with both the Bears and the Colts.
There was a time that we thought Joe Banner's leash was so long and it would be there forever, and he was eventually gone. Does this feel like with Howie, he is now at that point where he's at that road and he can either go left or right, and what happens here in the next couple of years could be the downfall of Howie, or it could be the complete opposite and he kind of rebuilds himself again? But does this feel like that moment where maybe that leash isn't as long depending on what happens next year and maybe the year following?
I think so, Hunter. I mean, look, it's a very weird subject when I talk to people who are in the know. Some tell me that, Jeffrey relies on Howie so much to navigate the league, to understand what's going on out there, for head coaching searches, that he'll never fire him. But like you said, you heard that about Joe Banner as well. Other people would have told me in the past year and a half that Jeffrey, wants to make sure everything is a smooth ship and he sees what's going on and he he's not as in love with Howie as maybe it's perceived to be. I just know, look, everybody has an expiration date at some point. I can guarantee you, if the Eagles have a losing season next year and then maybe another one, that's going to come back down on someone. I don't think Howie is untouchable. I know a lot of people think that, but again, you go back to how Jeffrey fired Joe Banner. I don't think anybody is unfireable.
I would agree that no one's unfireable. I we talk about how much value does Lurie place on the success that this team has had, that Roseman's been a part of that. We talk about it a lot. They've had one back-to-back losing season in, 20 years. How many franchises can say that? We've only had one back-to-back losing season. They very few infrequently have losing seasons, and yet people think that they got the worst GM, the worst coach, the worst, of everything. And they're like, you're Jeffrey Lurie saying, all we've done is win. We might not have won a Super Bowl, but we're constantly winning. Like, what more do you want from us? So that's why
But think about that, right? Andy Reid, how long did he coach? How successful was he? Eventually, at the end, it became a situation where Jeffrey felt like, just like with Joe Banner, it's better for the franchise to move on. He is very conscious of public relations. And now I'm not saying that drives his decisions, but the whole organization is. And right now, I think you would argue, even in past losing years, there's probably more public disappointment in Howie Roseman now than there has ever been. So factor that in, and factoring that Jeffrey tends to look at the micro and the macro. So he could do exactly what you're saying, Mike. Continue to look at the macro and look at all of the winning that they've done in general over 20 years. He could look at the micro and say, well, I guess Howie, since coming back from banishment from Chip, right? It's been 7 years. What are they? 4 in the playoffs, 3 out, or 3 in the playoffs, 4 out? It's something like that. It's not nearly as successful in the micro except for the Super Bowl, of course. But if you parlayed it out 20 years, and he could also just look at it and say, Howie has been great, just like Andy was great and Joe was great, but I've reached the point where I need a fresh perspective. He fired a guy who won a Super Bowl. So I think it's fair to say that he could fire at some point in his tenure here. He could fire Howie Roseman.
If the Colts and Bears are no longer a part of this, can they put the toothpaste back in the tube?
Man, if the Colts and Bears move on, there's still teams that are looking for quarterbacks. The Jets may be looking to move on from Sam Darnold. I've heard the Niners being involved with, looking around as far as Garoppolo is concerned. Who knows what's going to happen with the Texans. A couple of teams are probably going to draft a quarterback there at the top 5 or 10 of the draft, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's the Jets, and then may want to move on from what they've got and maneuver, and it kind of opens up the league. So I still think that there will be a dance partner, but the point would be, if you don't get anything done with the Colts and the Bears, you start to wonder exactly what kind of value they will get in return for Carson Wentz.
Right, that's the question I would have is, do those two teams, are they willing to give up the most? If you're starting to go to other teams, do you start to say, yeah, we're interested, but now we're only, like, we talked about this the other day. If you end up making a trade with like San Francisco and getting Garoppolo back, would you rather just try to fix Wentz and try again with Wentz, or take Garoppolo?
It depends. If I can convince Carson to let bygones be bygones, then I would probably try to do that. If it's the writing's on the wall that he just wants out, then it becomes a very untenable situation. You still have the leverage, Mike, right? You could still say, too bad, you're not getting out. Report to camp, or else you're going to lose a whole lot of money in fines. But that's not healthy, and that's not good for the organization.
Do they, though? Like, there are people out there that think the Eagles are losing leverage here.
Well, there's a difference between losing leverage in a trade, right, and losing leverage just overall in your situation with the quarterback. They have the leverage. They can literally sit there and say, Carson, if we don't trade you and you don't show up, you're going to lose a massive amount of money. He can pull Le'Veon Bell and say, hey, I've made a massive amount of money already on this contract. I'll take the year off. I don't know. Leverage is as good as literally the day that you're talking about it and the decision that someone is willing to make to exercise what they've got. So obviously it wouldn't be good for the Eagles if Carson looked at his funds and said, you know what, I don't mind sitting out a year. But it's not good for Carson to be coming off a terrible year and then to miss another year of football. How good is that for him when his contract has to be restructured wherever he goes next? So, again, leverage is also in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we were kind of trying to figure this out earlier. What would the reaction be if Carson Wentz came back to play at Lincoln Financial Field in another uniform? Do you think that the fans that think that it's all the organization's fault would give him like we're happy that you're back and we want you to, well, maybe not succeed because it would be against the Eagles, but would he be booed heavily and criticized insanely? Or do you think that there would be some respect involved? How do you think it would play out?
I suspect there will be a mixture of cheers and boos, and there's a lot to find out. Like, let's say he gets traded and he does a press conference and he slams Eagles fans or he slams people that Eagles like. It all depends on the words that come out of his mouth when he finally does talk.
He's probably going to say, I got to be better. Right?
Yeah, probably. I'm guessing he's not going to really say anything so lightning rodish that everybody's going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe Carson Wentz said that. But he will be judged on what he says nonetheless.
This is interesting nonetheless. Obviously, we continue to keep our eyes on it. The Inside the Birds podcast drops tomorrow morning. They're on the Monday-Thursday schedule now for the Inside the Birds podcast, so make sure you check out the latest tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I want to ask you, Todd McShay's latest mock draft, Jamar Chase goes number 6 to Philly. The reason that's interesting is because all three wideouts were on the board at 6, and they went with Chase of the pick of the litter. Would that be something you think Eagles fans would be okay with?
Wow, how many quarterbacks did he have going
4
in
in
the
a
top
row.
5 there? Wow, all 4?
4 in a
1, 2, 3,
row.
4 quarterbacks?
5 was the tackle, and then Chase went to the Eagles. And then he had the 3 receivers. Boom, boom, boom. 6, 7,
Right.
8.
Right. Yeah, well, that does seem like at that point, it's advantageous for the Eagles if assuming they're going ahead with Jalen Hurts, that, the best skill position players fall to them, and then it's best player available or that fits your scheme. I do think a guy like Chase would be good for them just because he's very well rounded. You don't have to worry about per se like Devontae Smith being too light or getting hurt or anything like that. He's a physical receiver. He does everything well. At that point, I think you're just blessed to be able to choose between all of those 3 guys. So I could see that. I could definitely see that happen.
Then you're leaving yourself in position to say that you picked the wrong one.
Well, that's a good point. If you went with the cornerback, right? If you went with Surtain, nobody's going to say, "Oh, I can't believe you passed on like J.C. Horn or somebody else like that."
Yeah, the difference here though is people were pissed because you went with the TCU receiver instead of the LSU receiver. Now I'm going with the LSU receiver. What do you want me to do? Go to the Big 12 again?
Well, you got 2 Alabama guys.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just funny how that would all be shifted.
At the end of the day, you're skipping on another national champion, all right?
Well, the last time Jamar Chase played, they won the national championship. Remember, he opted out. What about that?
Good point.
The fact that he opted out this year, Parsons opted out too. I guess you wouldn't have a problem with him.
I have no problem with him because I'm a Penn State fan, but I just don't see the Eagles drafting a middle linebacker. I guess he's kind of being considered one of those tweener now, like Isaiah Simmons types who can possibly play safety. I don't know. I watched him at Penn State and I thought he's like a great downhill linebacker. I know he can run, but I don't know if he can play that hybrid. And that's for, my intel gathering over the next few months. But I can't imagine them doing it anyway, as long as Howie Roseman is still in charge. Although I will say this, and we don't have the information yet, but we really need to find out what the preferences in style and scheme are for both Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon. Gannon's going to run a 4-3, but some 4-3 teams do place more emphasis on linebacker than others. So if he's really big into linebackers, can he be the one to convince Howie Roseman of what Jim Schwartz could not, which was to take a linebacker really high in the first round? I guess we'll see.
All right, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher, our guest today. Carson Wentz is still an Eagle. We'll find out the latest, of course, throughout the next coming days, weeks, hours, months. Who knows when Carson might be traded, but it seems that we do still think it is going to happen. So keep it locked here for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And make sure you listen tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. to the latest edition of Inside the Birds with Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. All right, Moshe, take care, man.
You guys rock. Good stuff today, man.
All right, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.